The message that changed everything. I had spent 3 years perfecting the art of being invisible. Not quiet, invisible. There's a difference. Quiet people still get noticed sometimes. Invisible people don't. At 32 years old, a single father raising a 6-year-old daughter alone, invisibility wasn't weakness. It was survival. I didn't have the luxury of mistakes. I didn't have the emotional bandwidth for drama. I needed stability, routine, predictability. Every morning I dropped my daughter Mia at school at 8:15 sharp. I arrived at the office at 8:45. Same desk, same chair, same corner, same rotation of muted shirts that made me blend into the gray and glass environment of our tech company. I worked hard. I kept my head down. I didn't flirt. I didn't gossip. I didn't attend happy hours. I left exactly at 5:30 every day to pick up Mia. No risks, no noise, no trouble. And it worked. Until I sent 3 words that nearly destroyed everything. I want you. The message was never meant for her. It was meant for my best friend Ryan, sarcastic proof that I could type the words even if I'd never dare say them. But I didn't send it to Ryan. I sent it to Olivia Monroe, my boss, vice president of engineering, the most powerful woman in the building, the woman who intimidated senior directors without raising her voice, the woman who could dismantle a flawed strategy in under a minute. The woman I had secretly admired, respected, and maybe felt something more for. The second I hit send, my blood ran cold. And then the worst possible word appeared under the message. See, she had read it. 10 seconds later I heard the sound. The sharp, confident click of heels on polished concrete. They stopped directly behind me. Then a single knock on my desk. Not loud. Not aggressive. Controlled. "Daniel," she said evenly. "My office." That was the moment I thought I was finished. Not just fired. Ruined. The walk to her office felt like crossing a courtroom floor toward sentencing. Every coworker looked up. No one knew what had happened, but everyone knew being summoned mid-afternoon by Olivia Monroe was never casual. Her office was glass on 3 sides. Clean. Minimal. Powerful. She closed the door. The click echoed louder than it should have. I stood there, already rehearsing my apology. I would explain it was a mistake. A joke. A misfire. She didn't look angry. She didn't look amused. She looked thoughtful. She walked around her desk, leaned slightly against it, folded her arms and asked one question. "Did you mean it?" Not, "Was that inappropriate?" Not, "Should I involve HR?" Not, "Who was that for?" Just, "Did you mean it?" My throat went dry. There are moments in life where you can lie safely. This wasn't one of them. Because I had meant it. Not in a reckless way. Not in a manipulative way. But in the quiet way a man means something after observing someone's strength for years. I swallowed. And I nodded. The silence that followed could have cracked glass. Then she said something that rearranged my entire world. "Have dinner with me tonight." I blinked. "What?" "You sent the message. I'm asking if you're willing to stand behind it." She wasn't smiling. She wasn't flirting. She was testing something. And I realized something else in that moment. She wasn't offended. She wasn't uncomfortable. She was curious. I agreed. And as I walked back to my desk, the office felt different. Not hostile. Watching. Like the air had shifted and only she and I knew why. Dinner was not what I expected. It wasn't romantic music and soft glances. It was direct. Honest. Unfiltered. She didn't ask about my feelings first. She asked about my life. "You leave every day at 5:30 sharp," she said. "No exceptions." "Why?" "My daughter," I answered. "I'm raising her alone." That changed her expression. Not pity. Respect. The kind of respect you earn without trying. She asked about Mia. About school. About bedtime routines. And I answered. Then she told me something that stunned me. "Most men in this building try to impress me," she said calmly. "You've spent 3 years avoiding eye contact. I didn't think it was appropriate. Or you didn't think you were enough?" That hit deeper than she probably realized. Because the truth? I had convinced myself she was out of my league in every possible way. Power. Status. Confidence. And I was just a quiet single dad trying to hold everything together. She leaned back in her chair and studied me. "You know what I see when I look at you, Daniel?" I shook my head. "I see discipline. Integrity. And someone who doesn't use people." That wasn't the reaction I expected. Then she said something that shifted the energy again. "I didn't build this company division by underestimating people." And suddenly I understood. She hadn't asked me to dinner because of the text. She had already noticed me long before that. But here's where things started to turn. Because the next morning the office was different. Whispers. Glances. Two managers stopped talking when I entered the break room. By lunchtime I heard it. Of course she'd pick him. Quiet guys are easier to control. Single dad. Probably looking for a promotion. She must feel sorry for him. I didn't respond. But it burned. Not because they thought poorly of me. Because they thought poorly of her. By the end of the day, someone had anonymously filed a complaint with HR suggesting favoritism. Based on one dinner. That's how fast judgment spreads. And here's the truth about society. A powerful woman dating a subordinate is called reckless. A quiet man dating his boss is called opportunistic. We were both being judged for different reasons. The following week, Olivia did something no one expected. She called an all-hands meeting. In front of the entire engineering department, she addressed it directly. I've heard rumors, she said calmly. Let me clarify something. The room went silent. There will be no favoritism. No special treatment. Daniel remains on his current projects. Performance metrics remain the same. She paused. And for those concerned about integrity, I expect the same standard of professionalism from everyone else. She didn't defend herself emotionally. She asserted boundaries. Powerfully. And respectfully. But the real twist came that afternoon. Because HR called me in. Not to reprimand me. To inform me that my name had come up repeatedly over the last year for leadership potential. Apparently, Olivia had already been advocating for me, long before the text. Quietly. Privately. Without my knowledge. She hadn't chosen me because of a message. She had already seen my value. And suddenly everything changed. Not because I was dating my boss. But because I stopped shrinking myself. That night when I picked up Mia, she hugged me tighter than usual. Why are you smiling, Daddy? I didn't realize I was. Because sometimes, I told her, being brave turns out better than you think. But bravery wasn't sending the text. Bravery was standing behind it. And respect? Respect was choosing not to let power imbalance define our story. That was just the beginning. Because the real test wasn't the message. It wasn't dinner. It wasn't office gossip. It was what happened when someone from my past showed up 3 weeks later, trying to destroy everything I had built. And that's when I learned something powerful. Sometimes the world underestimates the quiet man. But sometimes the quiet man has been building strength in silence. And when he finally stands up, the room listens. The man who tried to tear me down. 3 weeks. That's how long peace lasted. 3 weeks of careful professionalism. 3 weeks of measured distance at work and quiet dinners outside of it. 3 weeks of pretending the whispers didn't matter. But peace doesn't like to stay where growth is happening. It waits. Then it tests you. And my test walked into the office on a Thursday morning wearing a tailored suit and a smile that had ruined my life once before. His name was Marcus Hale. And he was my ex-wife's lawyer. I hadn't seen Marcus since the custody hearings 2 years ago. Back then he had looked at me the way people look at expired milk, mildly annoyed and ready to throw it out. You don't have the financial stability to provide primary custody, he had argued in court. You work long hours. You have no extended family support. He made me sound irresponsible, careless, unfit. What he didn't mention was that my ex-wife had walked out without warning. What he didn't mention was that I had rearranged my entire life to protect my daughter. But Marcus didn't deal in fairness. He dealt in leverage. And now he was standing in the lobby of my company, smiling. I froze when I saw him. He didn't. He walked straight toward me like he had been expecting this moment. Daniel Brooks, he said smoothly. Didn't expect to see you climbing the corporate ladder. I'm not climbing anything, I replied evenly. I work here. His eyes drifted past me, toward Olivia's glass office. Recognition flashed. Then something darker. Ah, he said quietly. That explains it. My jaw tightened. What explains what? He leaned in slightly. Your sudden professional stability. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice controlled. Why are you here, Marcus? I'm representing a client interested in partnership with your company. Of course he was. The universe has a strange sense of humor. He adjusted his cufflinks. And as it happens, I also represent your ex-wife. The air changed. She's filing for a custody modification. My heart stopped. What? She believes your recent, personal involvement with your superior creates instability. I couldn't breathe. He continued calmly, almost enjoying it. She feels your workplace relationship could affect your employment security. And by extension, your daughter's stability. He let the words sit there. Then he smiled. "I'll see you in court." And just like that, the peace shattered. That afternoon, I sat in Olivia's office again. This time not because of a text, but because my entire world felt like it was collapsing. "I don't want this to affect you," I told her. "If we need to stop." She cut me off. "We don't stop because someone tries to intimidate us." Her voice wasn't emotional. It was precise. "What exactly is he claiming?" "That our relationship creates professional instability." She leaned back slightly. "And does it?" "No." "Then he's bluffing." I shook my head. "He's not. He's strategic. He'll argue that power dynamics create ethical risk. That if HR intervenes, I could lose my job." She held my gaze. "Daniel, I didn't get where I am by allowing men like that to dictate my decisions." There was steel in her voice. But then she softened. "However, this isn't just about us. It's about Mia." That was the part that mattered. Always. The next week became a quiet war. Marcus contacted HR anonymously. He raised concerns about executive favoritism. He suggested internal audits. He requested documentation of my performance history. And then came the real blow. A rumor spread that I had received preferential treatment on a major infrastructure proposal. The project that could secure a 7-figure client. The same client Marcus represented. Coincidence? Not even close. By Friday, 2 senior managers were openly questioning my role in the deal. He only got that project because of her. Of course he did. Nobody asked about my 3 years of flawless performance. Nobody asked about the nights I stayed late remotely after Mia went to bed. They saw what they wanted to see. The single dad dating his boss. Convenient narrative. That's when Olivia did something unexpected. She removed herself from the approval chain of the project entirely. Publicly. "I will not participate in evaluation decisions involving Daniel Brooks," she stated in a leadership email. Clear. Transparent. Professional. Then she did something even more surprising. She appointed the harshest, most skeptical director in the department to lead the review. A man who had never liked me. If there was favoritism, it would be exposed. But there wasn't. And I knew that. The review meeting was brutal. 3 hours of scrutiny. Every line of code. Every architectural decision. Every projected revenue model. Marcus sat at the end of the table observing like a hawk. Waiting for me to slip. Waiting for me to look incompetent. I didn't. Because I wasn't. I answered every question. Calmly. Clearly. No defensiveness. No ego. Just facts. When it was over, the director leaned back in his chair and said something that shifted the room. "This is one of the most disciplined proposals we've reviewed this year." Silence. Marcus's smile faded slightly. "And it stands entirely on its own merit." There it was. Truth. Simple. Unavoidable. But Marcus wasn't finished. 2 days later, he filed emergency motion paperwork in family court, claiming that my romantic entanglement with a corporate superior created emotional instability for Mia. He requested a temporary custody hearing. I sat in my apartment that night watching my daughter color at the kitchen table. She looked up at me. "Daddy, why are you sad?" "Because I might lose you." But I didn't say that. "I'm not sad," I told her softly. "Just thinking." She walked over and hugged me. And that was the moment something shifted inside me. For years I had survived by staying invisible. By avoiding conflict. By keeping my head down. But invisibility doesn't protect what matters. Courage does. The court hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Marcus arrived confident. My ex-wife looked distant. Olivia didn't attend. She said something powerful when I told her about it. "This is your fight as a father. Not as my partner." And she was right. The judge reviewed the motion. Marcus presented his argument. He painted a picture of corporate scandal. Unethical behavior. Job risk. Instability. Then my attorney stood and presented documented evidence. 3 years of consistent employment. 0 disciplinary actions. Positive performance evaluations, dating back long before I ever had dinner with Olivia. School attendance records. Medical appointment logs. Teacher testimonials. Photos. Routine. Structure. Well, the judge looked at Marcus. "Where is the evidence of instability?" He tried to argue perception. Speculation. Risk. The judge shut him down. Speculation does not override documented stability. Motion denied. Just like that. Instant karma. Marcus's strategy had backfired. Not only had the motion been denied, the judge added a note in the record about harassment tactics. And that note? Would matter later. Outside the courthouse, Marcus approached me one last time. You think you've won? No, I replied calmly. I think I showed up. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. Because he didn't. I wasn't the exhausted man from 2 years ago. I wasn't the quiet man trying not to cause waves. I was a father who had nothing left to lose. And men like Marcus don't intimidate men like that. When I walked into the office the next day, something had changed. The whispers were gone. News travels fast in professional circles. Especially when someone's legal intimidation attempt becomes public record. The same managers who questioned me avoided eye contact. The director who led the review nodded respectfully. And Olivia? She simply met my eyes across the room. Not as my boss. Not as my protector. But as someone who had watched me stand on my own. That night she said something that stayed with me. You didn't need me to defend you. No, I said quietly. I needed to defend myself. And for the first time in my life, I understood what strength actually felt like. But what I didn't know yet was that Marcus wasn't the biggest threat. The real betrayal was coming from inside the company. And when it surfaced, it wouldn't just threaten my job. It would threaten everything Olivia had built. And that's when the real test would begin. The betrayal no one saw coming. If Marcus taught me anything, it was this. Threats from outside are loud. Threats from inside are silent. And silent threats are far more dangerous. For a few days after the custody hearing, the office felt almost calm. Not friendly, just cautious. The whispers had faded. The sideways glances were gone. Performance reviews continued. Deadlines remained deadlines. But something underneath the surface had shifted. I could feel it. The kind of feeling you get before a storm, when the air feels heavier even though the sky still looks clear. It started with an email. Subject line: Urgent Review, Infrastructure Proposal Risk Assessment. It came from Thomas Whitaker, Senior Director of Engineering, board favorite, 45 years old, polished, charismatic, and until recently Olivia's most vocal supporter. He requested an emergency executive meeting regarding potential compliance concerns tied to my project. Compliance concerns. That phrase doesn't get used casually. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about Marcus anymore. This was about power. I was not invited to the meeting. That was the first sign something was wrong. Normally, project leads attend executive reviews. This time, I was excluded. Olivia messaged me privately. Stay focused. I'll handle it. But I could hear it in her tone. This wasn't routine. 2 hours later, she called me into her office. Not urgently. Not angrily. Just, seriously. She closed the door. Thomas is claiming your proposal violates internal procurement transparency policies. I stared at her. That's not possible. Every vendor contract was documented. I know, she said evenly. I reviewed it myself. So what's the issue? She hesitated for half a second. He's suggesting your selection process was influenced. The words hung there. Influenced. Not incompetent. Not flawed. Influenced. By her. It was the cleanest accusation possible. Professional. Strategic. Poisonous. Thomas didn't attack directly. He positioned himself as the ethical guardian of the company. I just want to ensure integrity, he told the board. I respect Olivia deeply. But optics matter. Optics. That word again. First Marcus. Now Thomas. Different battlefield. Same weapon. The narrative was simple. Single father dates powerful executive. Receives high-profile project. Project lands major client. Must be favoritism. Never mind my years of documented performance. Never mind the third-party audits. Never mind reality. Perception spreads faster than truth. By Friday, the board had initiated an internal investigation. Olivia voluntarily stepped back from decision-making oversight again. But this time it felt heavier. More calculated. Thomas wasn't reacting. He was orchestrating. And then I learned something that changed everything. One of my colleagues, Aisha, quietly approached me in the break room. You need to know something, she whispered. Thomas wanted that project. My chest tightened. He pitched it to the board 2 months ago. They rejected it. Said the structure was too aggressive. I felt the pieces sliding into place. And now yours gets approved. It wasn't about ethics. It was about ego. Thomas wasn't protecting the company. He was protecting his pride. And he had found the perfect angle to strike. The investigation lasted 10 days. 10 days of audits. Email reviews. Vendor interviews. Financial tracing. 10 days where my integrity was under a microscope. I didn't sleep much. I didn't tell Mia much either, because she didn't need to carry adult stress. But Olivia knew. And for the first time, I saw something in her that wasn't composure. It was strain. Because this wasn't just about me. If the board believed Thomas, it would reflect directly on her leadership. And in corporate politics, perception can dethrone even the strongest executives. The review meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Boardroom level. Glass walls. City skyline behind them. Thomas arrived confident. Measured. Polished. He presented a slide deck outlining potential bias patterns. He highlighted dinner dates. Calendar overlaps. Message timestamps. He never accused directly. He implied. That's more dangerous. Then the audit lead stood. And something shifted. We found no evidence of procedural misconduct. Thomas's jaw tightened slightly. All vendor selections were documented, time-stamped, and independently verified. Slide after slide confirmed it. Every choice. Every number. Every approval. Cling. Then came the unexpected blow. The audit revealed something else. A conflict of interest. Not from me. From Thomas. 2 of the vendors he previously proposed had personal financial ties to a consulting firm partially owned by his brother-in-law. The room went silent. Thomas didn't see that coming. The lead auditor continued. While no illegal activity has been determined, the board may wish to review internal disclosure protocols. Instant karma doesn't shout. It unfolds. And in that moment, Thomas's entire posture shifted. The ethical guardian mask cracked. He wasn't protecting the company. He was projecting. The board requested Thomas step outside. The glass door closed behind him. Inside, something powerful happened. One board member, an older woman who had remained silent the entire time, looked at Olivia. You stepped back voluntarily twice. Why? Olivia answered calmly. Because integrity isn't something you defend with ego. It's something you prove with transparency. No drama. No anger. Just clarity. Then she did something that shocked even me. She stood. If the board believes my personal life compromises this company, I'm prepared to resign. The air froze. I felt like someone punched me in the chest. She was willing to sacrifice her position. Not for me. For principle. For fairness. For the idea that leadership must be clean, even when attacked. The board chair spoke slowly. No resignation is necessary. He turned toward the audit team. This matter is closed. Thomas returned to the room 5 minutes later. Not escorted out. Not fired. But stripped of authority. His project approvals were reassigned. His oversight privileges reduced. His influence diminished. No yelling. No humiliation. Just quiet accountability. The most powerful kind. That afternoon the office energy felt different again. Not whispering. Watching. Respectfully. People who once speculated now understood something. This wasn't favoritism. It was merit. And Thomas? He avoided me entirely. Not out of anger. Out of embarrassment. Because the quiet man he tried to discredit had stood on solid ground. That night I told Olivia something important. You shouldn't have offered to resign. She looked at me carefully. I didn't offer it for you. I know. I offered it because leadership means being willing to walk away rather than compromise values. There it was again. Strength without noise. Power without ego. And I realized something profound. For years I had admired her from a distance. But I had underestimated something. She admired strength too. Just a different kind. Quiet strength. Steady strength. The kind that shows up in courtrooms. The kind that answers questions without flinching. The kind that doesn't collapse when tested. The board released a formal internal memo clearing both of us. Performance recognition followed. The infrastructure proposal secured final approval. And for the first time in my career, I was invited to speak at an executive strategy session. Not because of her. Because of me. And when I stood at that podium, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. But here's what nobody realized yet. Thomas wasn't the final challenge. Power shifts create enemies. And someone above the board, someone with far more influence, had been watching everything unfold. And they had a plan. Not to destroy me. Not to destroy Olivia. But to test something far bigger. Because the real reveal was still coming. And when it did, it wouldn't just change my career. It would change my entire identity. The reveal no one was prepared for. The day the black cars arrived, nobody knew what it meant. 3 of them. Glossy. Tinted. Corporate. They pulled into the executive parking lot at 9:12 a.m., and within minutes the atmosphere inside the building shifted. Assistants started whispering. Department heads adjusted their schedules. The board members who normally appeared once a quarter were suddenly in the elevator at the same time. Something bigger than internal politics was happening. And for once, it had nothing to do with Thomas. I found out the same way everyone else did, through an all-company calendar invite. Mandatory Executive Town Hall, 1 p.m. Hosted by Evelyn Monroe. The name didn't mean much to most people. But when I saw Olivia's face after reading it, I knew it meant everything. She didn't panic. She didn't flinch. But for the first time since I'd known her, she looked uncertain. "Who is Evelyn Monroe?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, then answered plainly. "My mother." That wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what came next. "She's the majority shareholder." The air left my lungs. Majority shareholder. Which meant, this wasn't just Olivia's division. This wasn't just a corporate ladder. This was a family empire. And suddenly, every assumption I'd made about her shifted. She wasn't just a self-made executive fighting bias in a boardroom. She was heir to something far larger. And she had never once mentioned it. At 1 p.m., the entire engineering department gathered in the main hall. The board sat in the front row. Thomas was there too. Quiet. Controlled. Evelyn Monroe stepped onto the stage. Late 60s. Silver hair. Sharp eyes. She didn't carry warmth. She carried authority. The kind that doesn't need volume. She began calmly. "For the past 6 months, I have been observing this division closely." A murmur moved through the crowd. "Not because of performance metrics," she continued. "Because of leadership resilience." Her eyes scanned the room. Then landed briefly on Olivia. Then unexpectedly, on me. "I built this company from 2 employees and a rented office," Evelyn said. "I have seen talent rise. And I have seen character collapse." Silence. Then she addressed the tension directly. "I am aware of the internal investigations. The accusations. The legal interference attempts." No one breathed. "What interests me," she said, "is not the conflict." She paused. "It's how people responded to it." Her gaze returned to Olivia. "You stepped back twice." "Yes," Olivia replied evenly. "Why?" "Because leadership isn't about holding power," Olivia said. "It's about protecting credibility." Evelyn nodded once. Then she turned toward me. "And you?" My pulse pounded in my ears. You could have hidden behind her position. You didn't. "No," I said steadily. "Why?" I swallowed. "Because my daughter is watching how I handle pressure." That wasn't rehearsed. It was true. The room stayed silent. Evelyn studied me longer than was comfortable. Then she smiled faintly. The first hint of warmth all afternoon. She turned back to the audience. "I founded this company on one principle: competence over convenience." She gestured toward the board. "This division has survived internal sabotage, external legal pressure, and reputational attacks." Then she said something nobody expected. "Effective immediately, Olivia Monroe will be stepping into the role of Chief Executive Officer." The room erupted in quiet shock. "CEO. Not VP. Not interim. CEO." And then came the second announcement. "The board has also approved the creation of a new Director of Infrastructure Strategy position." My stomach dropped. I hadn't applied for anything. I hadn't lobbied for anything. Evelyn's eyes found mine again. "Daniel Brooks." Every head turned. I stood frozen. "Your proposal not only secured a 7-figure client. It restructured operational inefficiencies that senior leadership had overlooked for years." My throat tightened. "The board believes your strategic discipline deserves executive influence." The silence felt unreal. And then she finished. "You will report directly to the CEO." Which meant, to Olivia. But not as subordinate in a hidden narrative. As chosen leadership. On merit. In front of everyone. No whispers. No speculation. Just clarity. The applause started slowly. Then built. Not forced. Not polite. Real. Thomas didn't clap. He stared forward. But it didn't matter. Because instant karma doesn't always punish loudly. Sometimes it elevates quietly. And elevation is louder. After the town hall, people approached me differently. Not cautiously. Respectfully. The same managers who once questioned my integrity now asked for strategic insight. Aisha hugged me. "You earned this," she said. And for the first time in my career, I believed it. Later that evening, Olivia and I stood alone in her office. Her office as CEO. You knew? I asked softly. No, she admitted. I knew she was watching. I didn't know she was ready. Why didn't you ever tell anyone she was majority shareholder? She gave a small smile. Because I wanted to know who respected me without knowing that. That hit deeper than anything else. She had tested the room. And the room had revealed itself. But there was still something unresolved. Are you sure this won't complicate us? I asked quietly. She stepped closer. Daniel, we didn't survive gossip, lawsuits, and sabotage to be undone by success. For years I had lived small, careful, contained. But something had changed. I wasn't just a single dad trying to stay invisible anymore. I was a leader, chosen not because of romance, not because of sympathy, but because of competence. And that changes how a man stands. That night when I picked up Mia, she ran toward me like always. Daddy, did you have a good day? I knelt down. I had a big day. Like a superhero day? I smiled. Not a superhero. Then what? I thought about it. A brave day. She nodded like that made perfect sense. Because to a child, bravery isn't loud. It's just showing up. But here's what nobody knew yet. Becoming CEO shifts power. And when power shifts, old alliances collapse. New enemies emerge. And the biggest test of all? Wasn't about romance. Wasn't about promotion. It was about something much bigger. A decision that would either secure everything or cost us everything. Because in the corporate world, the higher you rise, the harder they look for ways to push you down. And someone was already planning their next move. The decision that defined everything. Success is strange. People think the hardest part is getting there. It isn't. The hardest part is what happens after. Because once you rise, everyone starts measuring you differently. Your mistakes matter more. Your choices echo louder. And sometimes the biggest challenge comes not from enemies, but from decisions that test who you really are. 3 months after Olivia became CEO, the company was growing faster than anyone expected. The infrastructure overhaul I designed had reduced operational costs by nearly 30%. The client Marcus represented, the same client who once tried to destroy my career through legal intimidation, had signed a long-term contract worth tens of millions. Irony has a funny way of revealing itself. Marcus never contacted me again. He didn't need to. His reputation had already suffered after the judge documented his legal harassment attempt. That note in the court record followed him quietly. And in the legal world, quiet consequences travel far. But Marcus wasn't the final challenge. Success had opened another door. And behind it waited a problem far bigger than personal conflict. One morning Olivia called an emergency executive meeting. Her voice was calm, but serious. We've received a buyout offer, she said. The room went still. Corporate buyouts are rarely good news. They mean control changes hands. They mean culture shifts. They mean people lose jobs. Who's the buyer? Someone asked. Olivia glanced down at the report. Titan Global Holdings. The name landed like a stone. Titan wasn't a company. It was a giant. A multinational conglomerate that absorbed smaller companies and stripped them down for profit. Thousands of employees across industries had lost their jobs after Titan acquisitions. And now they wanted us. The offer was massive. Bigger than anything the company had ever been worth. Billions. The board was divided immediately. Some members saw financial victory. Others saw cultural destruction. Titan's model was simple. What? Restructure. Lay off. Automate. Profit. It worked financially. But it destroyed communities, departments, families. And suddenly I understood why Olivia looked troubled. This wasn't just business. This was responsibility. Later that evening we sat alone in the office again. The city lights glowed through the glass walls. What do you want to do? I asked her. She exhaled slowly. The board is leaning toward selling. Do you agree? She shook her head. I didn't fight for this company just to hand it to people who treat employees like numbers. But there was a problem. Titan's offer was legally strong. If enough shareholders agreed, the sale could happen with or without her support. And that's when the twist came. Evelyn Monroe, Olivia's mother, still held the largest block of shares. Her vote could stop the acquisition. But Evelyn had not yet revealed her position. And no one knew what she would choose. The board meeting to decide the vote happened the following Friday. Executives filled the long glass conference room. Lawyers sat along the walls. Titan representatives joined through video screens. Cold, professional, impatient. Their spokesperson spoke first. This acquisition will maximize shareholder value and ensure operational scalability. Translation. Cut staff. Increase margins. Collect profit. Then Olivia spoke. Her voice was calm, clear. We are not a failing company in need of rescue. She displayed the growth numbers. Revenue up. Client retention strong. Employee satisfaction high. Selling now would sacrifice long-term innovation for short-term profit. Titan's representative leaned forward. With respect, sentimentality does not drive markets. Olivia didn't react. Neither does greed, she replied quietly. The room went silent. Then Olivia Monroe stood. Everyone turned. Even Titan's executives paused. She walked slowly to the head of the table. I have spent 40 years building this company, she said. I have seen what happens when corporations forget that people create value, not spreadsheets. She looked around the room. At the board. At Olivia. Then unexpectedly. At me. For the past year, Evelyn continued, I have been observing the character of those leading this company. She paused. Character determines longevity. Titan's representative spoke again. Mrs. Monroe, our offer represents a historic financial opportunity. Evelyn smiled slightly. I'm not interested in historic profits. She turned toward the board. I'm interested in historic leadership. And then she cast her vote. No. Just one word. But because of her majority shares. That word ended the acquisition. The sale collapsed instantly. Titan disconnected from the call. And the room exploded with quiet disbelief. The decision made headlines across the tech industry. CEO rejects billion-dollar buyout. Family-owned tech firm chooses employees over profit. For some investors it was shocking. For employees it was something else. Oh, because for once, a company had chosen people over numbers. Later that night the office was nearly empty. I stood by the window looking over the city. Olivia joined me. You realize what you helped protect? She said. I didn't do anything. She smiled. You reminded me why leadership matters. I looked at her. You already knew. Maybe, she said. But courage spreads when people see it. For years I had believed staying invisible was the safest way to live. But the truth? Respect isn't earned by hiding. It's earned by standing when things get difficult. Life settled into something new after that. Not perfect, but meaningful. The company continued to grow. Departments expanded. Innovation accelerated. And the culture remained intact. At home, Mia still asked the same question every evening. Daddy, did you have a good day? And every time I thought about the strange chain of events that started everything. 3 words. 1 accident. A message sent to the wrong person. I want you. If that message had gone to Ryan like it was supposed to, none of this would have happened. No dinner. No courage. No fight. No transformation. Sometimes mistakes aren't mistakes. Sometimes they're doors. And the only question that matters is whether you're brave enough to walk through them. One evening months later, Mia sat coloring at the kitchen table again. She looked up. Daddy? Yes. Are you important at work? Kids ask the most honest questions. I thought about the promotions, the board meetings, the headlines. Then I shook my head. I'm responsible, I said. She nodded like that was better. And maybe it was. Because power fades. Titles change. But responsibility? That's what defines a person. As for Olivia and me, we never rushed anything. No dramatic office romance. No shortcuts. Just respect, trust, and time. Because the strongest relationships aren't built in moments of excitement. They're built in moments of pressure. Moments where character shows. Moments where 2 people choose integrity over convenience. Looking back now, I understand something clearly. The world will underestimate quiet people. It will assume silence means weakness. It will assume humility means lack of ambition. But sometimes, the quietest person in the room is simply waiting for the right moment to stand. And when they do, everything changes.